we're going to record, though the recording is already in progress. So thank you for joining us today for this session. I am Flo Williams with the University of Central Florida, and I'd like to just encourage you to meet each other in the chat by sharing where you're from, where you're joining us from. And at any point in the session, you can go ahead and continue to chat to JeVaughn. She will monitor the chat and also take your questions intermittently as she goes through. Our speaker, as you might have noticed, is JeVaughn Lancaster from Lynn University, and her topic is creating powerful learning objectives. I'm going to close my mic now, and JeVaughn, the floor is yours for the next 45 minutes or so.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Flo. And thank you everybody so much for joining this session. I'm so excited to present on powerful learning objectives. It's something that, you'll hear is near and dear to my heart. And it'll be interesting to find out why and what sparked this and why, I'm so intrigued by these learning objectives. Let me share my screen. I don't know if yesterday any of you were able to join my presentation, but afterwards I was reflecting on it just a little bit and I realized, you know what? You didn't even really talk about yourself or where you came from. So I had to kind of refocus a little bit and tell you how all of this, came to light. So here we are, creating powerful learning objectives. Now, I always say that learning objectives are really the foundation of any lesson or module or course, anything that you're creating and have, learners learning. So as educators, I always say we have to remember to build with purpose and to use the learning objectives as a guide throughout our teaching processes. So throughout this session, we'll talk about learning objectives, Bloom's taxonomy, alignment, so many different things, a few best practices here and there. And then I have a quick poll that I think we might just do in the chat because, of time. So just a little bit about me. Ultimately, I have a passion for learning, right? I always joke and tell everyone that I'm a recovering academic that has fallen off the bandwagon a few times because for whatever reason, I always end up going back to school and getting another degree. So it's really funny on how that came to be. But let me tell you a little bit about my institution. So we are Lynn University. We are a small private nonprofit with about 3,500 students. We have maybe a little over 100 full-time faculty, a slew of adjuncts, many different academic units. We're about 30% international. We're home of the Institute of Learning and Achievement, where a lot of students with, learning differences attend our institution as well. So we have a high level of accommodations. So we have to make sure that in all of our content, we have everything enabled and accessible through universal design for higher ed, just to make sure that all of our students obtain an equitable education. So we were founded in 1962, and this is a cute little image because every year we celebrate Founders Day. And for the past few years, we've had tricycle races with the president of the university and everything. So on November 1st, 9 times out of 10, you'll find us probably somewhere outside on the circle having these little trike races. We are an Apple Distinguished University, and I want to say we've been maybe 6 times Apple Distinguished. So all of our undergrad students, they do receive iPads on admission. And again, we create all of our courses to be fully developed. We're on Canvas using the iPads. We are located in sunny South Florida in Boca Raton, and that's just a snapshot of one of our buildings, the International Business Center. And we did host the 2012 presidential debate. It was the final debate between Mitt Romney and Obama. So that was hosted here, which really gave us a lot of the tech infrastructure that we have here right now. So now it's all about maintaining and improving. Our ultimate mission is to provide an innovative, global, and personalized education that enables students to realize their potential. And then my team, I'm under academics, of course. I'm the manager of the instructional design team here at Lynn. I have a department, a fairly small instructional design department. So it's really myself. I have 2 other full-time instructional designers, a part-time instructional designer, and I have someone that works with me on assessments and student support. So we're really small. And I know a big difference, what I found talking with a lot of colleagues in the industry, that you know, while many instructional designers service one particular school, or college, we focus on supporting the entire university. So we build courses and learning materials, documents, and everything for everyone all over. And this is our VP of Academic Affairs, Dr. Carter Tellison, and this is our academic dean, Mike Petrosky. So let's get into the thick of things with my inspiration. So what really inspired me to learn or to begin learning about learning objectives? Well, my passion has always been the online aspect and creating and developing tools and content for online courses. So with that is years ago when I discovered TOPkit. I was able to sit in one of the sessions of TOPkit, and it was really one of their main sessions on creating their online learning course. And after I sat through that session, I was really in awe about all of the amazing things that they did. So when we were given the copyright access to reuse this course, I really took it and tried to adapt it to our infrastructure. And I pulled certain elements of it, created new elements, and really tried focusing on these learning objectives for all of our course content. So with that, in collaboration with a lot of the content that I learned from the TOPkit, I started creating our own course. So this video right here, and I'll show it, is really a collaboration between a lot of the aspects from TOPkit and along with Lynn. Now, you know what? I don't think I shared my sound, so I'm going to stop the share just for a second, and I'm gonna reshare and make sure I share sound so you guys can see the video. And this is really how I work with faculty in the very beginning to help them create meaningful and measurable learning objectives. It's only about a minute long. Although course objectives are required as part of the Lynn University's participation in the Southern Association of Colleges and Schools accreditation process, the creation of well-written course objectives helps to create more meaningful learning environment for your students.
If you've taught a course before, your concern may be geared toward how to take what has worked successfully in a face-to-face environment and translate that into your online environment. For the rest of you, designing interactions based on measurable outcomes may seem more experimental as the online environment presents new tools to incorporate into online activities. This week's content provides strategies to help create measurable objectives, along with some tips to help design meaningful course interactions. After reading about these concepts, start to create one module for your course that will include objectives, activities, and interactions.
So that's pretty much how we start, right? So learning objectives is really the foundation, like I said, of any course in the beginning. So what are they? Because this is on learning objectives, I decided to include a few learning objectives for this session. So upon completion of this session, hopefully you should be able to articulate personal attitudes and values related to the use of learning objectives, analyze course content to determine measurable learning objectives, and investigate the importance of developing a comprehensive list of learning objectives. So, Quality Matters is really the quality assurance leader in online education, and they focus on rubrics and standards, professional development, and peer-reviewed courses. So if any of you are familiar with Quality Matters, they're really the who's who of online education. So I thought that it was really important for me to add in that little factor about how I've gotten to this point where I am. So it was between one, me starting to really develop these skills by attending the TOPkit presentation. Two, becoming Quality Matters certified. Now, us as an institution, we are not Quality Matters certified. So I just want to make sure I let that be known. We are definitely OLC, members of the Online Learning Consortium, and that part also helped with me defining, our overall plans of creating learning objectives. But Quality Matters Standard 2 states that learning objectives or competencies describe what learners will do upon completion of the learning materials. And then Quality Matters Standards 2.1 states that the course learning objectives or course program competencies describe outcomes that are measurable. And as we get into it a little bit more, I'll kind of show you what we've done to make sure that our objectives are measurable. And of course, I can't talk about, learning objectives without discussing a little bit about Bloom's taxonomy. I'm sure everyone is very familiar with Bloom's taxonomy if you know anything about learning objectives and how it really promotes a higher level of thinking within education and how it allows students to analyze and evaluate concepts. And again, learning objectives must be measurable. So when it comes to Bloom's taxonomy and how we really, started talking to faculty within our faculty development sessions, is that we really want to have, our learning scaffold. So the way that our core curriculum is built is that, students take these 100 level courses, 200 level courses, and so on and so forth. So when we're working with faculty, we try to make sure that those 100 level courses stay to the lower end of that order of thinking. And as we progress on, we move to a higher level. So, the introductory courses should really focus on the lower level of cognition, affections, and psychomotor skills. And so we really try to focus on that when we're working on faculty, because we want our students to really build up their levels and excel. So maybe at the end of that 100 level course, we tried to help the faculty members create assessments that'll build them up to closer to that second level on Bloom's. And again, we talk about alignment. So we found that there's a lot of misconceptions when it comes to Bloom's. And I know that Bloom's can be very controversial. There's a lot of articles and podcasts and, things about the positives or the negatives of Bloom's taxonomy. But when we think about alignment, and I've said measurable so many times, I want to say that what I found with working with faculty is that a lot of faculty members would absolutely create their Bloom's taxonomy learning objectives, but the way that it would be created was in alignment with the reading, right? Or something that the students aren't assessed on. And I always tell the faculty that it is important, when a student is reading an article or when the student is reading a chapter, that they don't necessarily grasp onto the same cues. So one student might think one thing is important while someone else might pull out a different point. So if we're bringing out all of the student notes and annotations throughout the courses, everyone is going to have something different annotated on that document, right? We won't really be able to truly measure your learning objectives if it's something that we can't assess. So that's really how we work with the alignment portion of creating our learning objectives. So what we did, and I touched on this shortly yesterday, so I apologize if this is a little redundant to you, is that we went through all of the courses at Lynn to create our own type of Bloom's taxonomy guide for the faculty members. Now, as you can see, it's based on knowledge comprehension application, which is the original version of Bloom's and not the revised, but what we have intertwined is a mixture of the original, we have a mixture of the revised, and since we are our Apple and everything that we have is digital and we have a communication department, we definitely included the Bloom's digital words as well. So, we analyzed all the courses, we pulled out familiar verbs, and we created, this list of learning objectives. So what we also did was with help from guides that we found is we also aligned them to specific teaching strategies to help the faculty members really, define their learning objectives appropriately. So then I was thinking about other ways of how we can really, help faculty members with their creation of learning objectives. And these are screenshots from my computer, and I always work in dark mode, so they'll look backwards. So we created these course content collection worksheets. And I'm sure a lot of you probably use similar tools if you're in instructional design. So when we're breaking down the course, we break it down linearly so the faculty members can see it all on a collaborative document. So here we have, all of the housekeeping items of the course, but this is what's really important. We have the faculty members fill out the overview, and we have the faculty members fill out the learning objectives. Now, sometimes if they have materials that they can add here, fine. But what we're really concerned about is their assignments and their assessments in every single module. Because then what we do is we make sure that their learning objectives are right here aligned to their assessment. And we always try to make sure that we can see every single learning objective embedded within that assessment, whatever it may be. Sometimes that assessment can be in the form of a discussion question, a paper, a video. It really depends, but we really want to see the students demonstrating that. And, you know, faculty members, we always tell them and reassure them that the learning objectives can also be a tool that's used twofold, right? It could be used as a teaching tool for the faculty members to say, okay, if students didn't quite grasp that one learning objective, maybe I need to reevaluate my delivery system. And I always tell students on the other end of the spectrum, well, you know, if there's something that you're not getting and you're seeing that you're getting wrong in those learning objectives, you can definitely take that back to your instructor and say, you know what, I don't understand this. Let me, is there anything that I can do, or is there any further information that you can provide me where I can really start grasping this content and really understanding the material? So it really goes twofold. So then when we're thinking about best practices, I always say it's important when you're creating learning objectives for, say, one module or one assessment, to keep it 3 to 5 learning objectives, and that should really be sufficient for an assessment. And that's really important. I've seen courses that has, you know, 10 or 15 learning objectives in one module, and, you know, it includes a multitude of aspects that just really aren't being assessed within that topic. So alignment, 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 very important. Like I said, we always want to make sure that the learning objectives are always aligned. We try to avoid using the same Bloom's word in one module. So for example, if you have 3 learning objectives within one module, you wouldn't want to say describe, 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 or analyze, 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 because you want to assess the students in a variety of modalities, therefore including a variety of verbs. Even though it may be in the same domain, that's fine, but, you know, different things allow the students to submit assignments differently. Of course, ensure each objective is measurable. I see a lot of times faculty members want to use the word understand. You know, by the end of this module, students will be able to understand. Well, you can't really measure how a student will understand something, right? So you really want to make those measurable to the objective. And then KISS, keep it super simple. So we need succinct information, not paragraphs. Sometimes, you know, a faculty member might want to really expand on that learning objective to say, you know, everything that the student might have to accomplish within that assessment, but then it turns the objective more into a assignment instruction rather than an actual objective. And then another thing that I always notice, I always say that upon completion of this unit, this course, this assignment, students should be able to, and I use the word should, and some people use the word will, and I really don't think that's interchangeable, because my belief system is that just because you teach it doesn't mean they will learn it, right? They should learn it, but that doesn't necessarily mean that they will. All right, so I am going to ask a quick poll and have some folks put your answers in the chat. So I want to know, which one of these learning objectives are weak and which one is strong? So we have learning objective 1, become familiar with elements of editing, or objective 2, identify elements of editing, including composition, setting, and lighting. So if you would put in the chat which one you think is the weak one and which one you think is the strong one, and we can have a quick conversation of that. All right, so far I see 2 is strong. Okay, Lori also said 2 is strong. I agree using should. Yay. 1 is weak, 2 is strong, 2 is strong. Very good. Does anyone want to say why they think 2 is stronger than 1? And I'm okay if you want to turn on your mic and say it. Okay, we have the details, it's specific. 2 is strong because it's more explicit. 1 is weak, it's difficult to measure, becoming familiar. Absolutely, absolutely. And you are all 100% correct. So become familiar with elements of editing. That is very vague, right? There's no way that you can actually measure that. Okay, you know, there's a lot of things that you can do with an assessment that'll help you become familiar with elements of editing. But what? Exactly, Dana, what? But if you want to be really specific, you'll say identify elements of editing, including composition, setting, and lighting. Maybe, you know, in a different module or in a different topic, you will have to definitely talk about different, you know, aspects of editing. Absolutely, good job. I have one more. So the first one is describe and create a marketing plan for your organization, or create a marketing plan for your organization. Which one would be the strong one and which one would be the weak one? And again, if you want to turn on your mic, feel free. I know this one is probably a little trickier than the first. 2 verbs is a no-no. Exactly. 1 is weak, 2 is strong. It's funny because I actually discussed this in my class with my students. I have a cohort of first-year doctorate students, and it's a tech class. We were definitely talking about creating lesson plans, and I included this number 2, describe and create a marketing plan, or create, and almost all of them got that one wrong. Absolutely. The second one is the strong one because it's telling you exactly what to do. It's, you know, part of the higher order of thinking, and, you know, it's very succinct. Describe and create, having 2 verbs, it typically just is a no-go when it comes to creating strong learning objectives. All right, so now I clicked on that a little too fast. Let's think about working smarter or not harder. Now, there's been a lot of chat, I'm sure, when it comes to ChatGPT. I'm sure a lot of you have definitely seen or read or experimented a little bit with ChatGPT. Would that be true? Can I see in the comments if anyone has experimented at all? because I know I actually absolutely, as a matter of fact, try to look into ChatGPT and all of the others as much as possible. And I can get into an entire conversation because I just actually assigned, I have it as a favorite, so do I. I just assigned my doc students a full assignment regarding ChatGPT and to analyze it and everything, because it's an EDD program and they're all, well, most of them are in education, or they're teachers or they're assistant principals or something. So it was definitely interesting to hear about it from their perspective. So, in chatting with ChatGPT, thinking about this presentation, I wanted to know if it can really, create learning objectives for an assessment. So I asked ChatGPT, give me 3 learning objectives based on Bloom's taxonomy, creating level on an assessment based on the fundamentals of competency-based education. Now, I'm all about competency-based education, and I consider myself almost an expert on it. And I can talk about that again for hours on end because it was my dissertation topic. But let's see. So ChatGPT responded, sure. Here are 3 learning objectives based on Bloom's taxonomy, creating a level for an assessment. So 1, design a competency-based curriculum for a specific subject area, including measurable learning outcomes, assessment criteria, and instructional strategies. So what do you guys think? Do you think that that's a measurable Bloom's learning objective? Yes. Todd, I think I would agree with you. I mean, it's not as strong as maybe one that's authentically written, but had I actually uploaded a specific assignment, then yeah, it might have created something that was a little more succinct. Or maybe if I asked it a follow-up question, but this is definitely the beginning of a very strong learning objective. I can go in and I can edit it to really make it mine. Yeah, it is broad, right? But that's because I didn't give it specific details. I didn't tell it, explicitly what I wanted it to create that learning objective on. But I can definitely begin to edit this to make it mine. So would I say that it's perfect? No, but I think it's best to say it can give you a starting point. So let's look at the second one. Develop a performance task or project that aligns with a specific competency and assesses students' mastery of that competency using rubrics or other objective measures. So what do you guys think about number 2? I completely agree, Karen. It's really a good springboard to build on. And I feel like that's a basis of it, and that's how we can really apply it to education. We can enhance critical thinking skills. I know that also is pretty controversial because I've heard and read from my faculty and from different publications that, it'll hinder a lot of creativity. But if you think about it, the more explicit you are with asking it what you want, you have to think about those questions, right? So maybe it's time to rethink a lot of things. Judy, yeah, two is definitely a really good start. Don't know enough about competency-based. Okay, that's fair. I can definitely see that. It's more about breaking down units, right? So instead of sitting through an entire semester, a student will have a list of competencies, and once a student meets or exceeds that one competency is when they can move on to the next session or section of the course. So what about 3? Create an instructional resource or tool, such as a video tutorial or interactive simulation that supports students' acquisition of a particular competency and enhances their learning experience. What do we think about number 3? Anything? So there's a lot going on here, I feel, in number 3. I feel that it's kind of all over the place. It's not very strong. It doesn't really, you could do a lot with this. You could break this down into maybe 2 objectives. Yeah, it's way more. We don't need a small paragraph. We just need one specific item within our learning objectives. I didn't hear that. Do you want to repeat? I'm not sure if someone had a question. Yes, absolutely, Karen. So ChatGPT really encourages development of good questions. Now, you know, as it turns out, I look at a lot of different AI tools, and there's another tool, and I know I included ChatGPT because I think this one is the most well-known since it's getting a lot of, media attention lately. But there's also one called Elicit, ELICIT, that is, very forward moving. It's such a great tool, especially if you are conducting some type of research. It will build strong questions. It will definitely help you build very strong learning objectives, but it's really for research-based questions. And I really feel that it's a game changer for anyone that's really working on any type of research. Is called Elicit. It's definitely going to be a game changer in the world of AI in education.
Everything is very pretty here. There's like the
so at the end,
river is like,
ChatGPT said, these learning objectives require students to apply their knowledge and understanding of competency-based education to create something new or original. They also emphasize higher order thinking skills such as analysis, synthesis, and evaluation, which are essential for effective implementation of a competency-based education. Now, this part right here was, pretty much spot on. I really like that one. Yeah, Todd, maybe so, maybe so. I know I have my phone on mute, but I know Siri always likes to interrupt too, right? Every time you're saying something. And at this time, I would like to open it up for questions. Or comments.
Thank you, JeVaughn. I think you have given us so much to think about that people are right now either thinking or playing with ChatGPT. We're
Probably
going to
playing on
give them a minute to think about what they want to talk about.
Sure. Let me see if I can post the other link in the chat.
And there is a question that you might want to respond to in the chat right now. To start the conversation, we have 5 minutes in which to answer questions and, go through to wrap up this presentation.
Sure, let me scroll up. Did you say you did graduate work? I did. I absolutely did. I assigned my my doc students an assignment. They had to ask ChatGPT to give them a 1,500 word paper using APA format on a topic that they felt they were experts in. So I didn't really limit what their topics were. I wanted them to then evaluate the paper that was given to them by ChatGPT. I wanted them to determine the writing style. I wanted them to double check APA to make sure that it definitely was in the correct format, APA 7. They had to determine what writing level was there. And then they had to pretty much analyze it. So I asked them to check all the references that they gave them, because it was also a requirement that they included 5 references in that paper as well. So there were so many different working pieces to, this assignment. And in the beginning, I definitely have an English teacher. She teaches 8th grade ELA. So she was very much completely 100% against that. But then afterwards, after she had time to experiment with it and she came back to present her results, her attitude completely changed. And she was like, oh, this isn't as bad as I thought. Because, you can tell that you have to be so creative when you're asking it these types of questions, because what happened first is that while it was definitely providing in-text citations, it was definitely providing quotes. When you looked at them, it pulls from everywhere on the internet, right? So you can see quotes from YouTube videos, or you can see quotes from Wikipedia, and all of these sorts of things that you normally wouldn't quote, especially at a graduate level in a research paper. So then I had them analyze every single citation that was provided to them. They found out that while some of the authors were correct, the links were incorrect. So then they had to do a deeper dive to create those properly. So they had to look up the author, they had to look up the article, link it properly. Then they had to say, okay, this isn't what I need. So then now they said, okay, ChatGPT, I need, 5 peer-reviewed sources. And then when they gave it those explicit instructions, they were then given back, better resources, but their APA was still, a little iffy. They still definitely had to 100% go back and edit those APA citations. They had to edit those in-text citations. What are your thoughts about creating citations for content? You know what? I'm okay with that too. And I know that our librarians are actually creating LibGuides on proper citations of things that were created through AI. The challenge is often creating objectives that align while accomplishing what the faculty needs. Judy, absolutely. And to answer that question, I always have faculty members think backwards and use, design elements of backwards design, because I always feel that once they really create that assessment, they could then easily go back and say, okay, this assessment is created. This is exactly what I want the students to do. Now they are definitely here describing, they're definitely recalling, they're definitely evaluating. So that makes it 100% easier for faculty. Were there any other questions that I missed?
I think you have answered the questions that were asked in the chat, and you did a very good job of keeping up with the chat. And we want to thank you for sharing your expertise with us. At this time, I think you have given our participants a lot to think about, and we are really pleased that you used the TOPkit resource as a baseline for your own work, and you have taken the time to work on it and improve it. Thank you so much for doing that. So at this time, I am going to hand it back over to Sue while I ask participants to just